Welcome to the Insomnia Project. Sit back, relax, listen, and we'll have a conversation about the mundane. One thing we can promise you is that our conversation will be less than fascinating so that you can feel free to drift off. Thank you for joining us. We hope you will listen and sleep. I'm your host, Marco Timpano.
And I'm your co-host, Nidhi Khanna. Feel free to check us out online at theinsomniaproject.com or tweet us at Listen and Sleep.
Nidhi, how's your day going?
So far, so good, Marco. It's been a bit of a lazy afternoon.
Yeah.
Which I sort of like. You need one of those every once in a while where you just curl up with a blanket, a little bit of Netflix or a book, whatever you want in this day and age, and a cup of tea.
Mm-hmm. What tea are you drinking these days?
I'm always a big fan of a chai, so
Okay.
I like to make my own chai.
Really? So
Yeah.
tell me about your chai and how you make it, because if I understand correctly, everyone in India makes their own chai, correct?
Most of the time,
Okay.
yeah. You don't really have chai lattes
Right.
or anything like that.
So what is a chai then? For people who aren't exactly sure what a chai is, other than the chai lattes that they get at various coffee houses.
So a chai really is tea that has been spiced, essentially. It is the Hindi word for tea.
Oh, chai is?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So it's a bit redundant to say
A chai tea.
A chai
Because
tea.
you're basically saying tea, but two languages.
you got it. So I usually have in my mixture of chai, cloves and cardamom and ginger. I love ginger tea, so I put a lot of ginger, some cinnamon, and some nutmeg sometimes. So it really depends on if you want something that's a bit more sweet or something that's a bit more earthy and bitter, I guess.
Oh, I see. So you like these different spices, I guess you could say, and flavorings like ginger in your tea, in your chai, I should say. Do you add milk to it?
I do.
Okay.
So that's one of the big things about Indian tea is that you always add milk to
I see.
it. And I really enjoy it with, a thicker milk. I don't particularly like it with skim milk. It has to be
Okay.
like 1% or 2% milk. And then you usually have it with sugar, even if it's just a tiny bit of sugar, just to taste. And that's how I like it. I love the spices because I find it very warming and very soothing, as opposed to, for example, an Earl Grey, which I find a little too light, not robust enough
I
for
see.
me.
You were recently in England. Now, did you partake in tea time over there?
I did, Marco. I'm a big fan of tea time. And of course, the English do their tea time in a most spectacular way. And they have so many different types of tea. If you go to all these different retailers, or even what you get in the grocery store is pretty good tea in comparison to what you might get over here. But I very, very much enjoy sort of the scones and the cookies and the little cucumber sandwiches that might come along with the tea. So how about you? What's your favorite tea?
It's interesting. I have different teas for different times of day. So I like a breakfast tea for breakfast. I know that sounds very boring, but there's just something about a nice black tea that's not infused with too much. Like, for example, an Earl Grey has that wonderful essence of bergamot that I really enjoy. It's just in the morning I want it to be very subtle, let's say, right? And I like to add milk myself. I like a milky tea and either honey or sugar. I'm trying to get off sugar, so I'm using more honeys. And I know with my coffee I've been actually using condensed milk, so I'm not using any additional sweetener other than the condensed milk, which is a sweet milk, right? So I think Vietnamese coffee tends to be coffee where they use condensed milk, and I had it once in a Vietnamese restaurant, so I've incorporated it into my coffee drinking. And then later in the day I'll be more inclined to have a Earl Grey tea or a flavored tea of some sort. One of my favorite teas, which is really difficult to find, is a tea that's been infused with rose petals. I love the flavor of rose petals.
Wow.
I know it's a weird sort of flavor to really resonate with someone like myself. I never would have thought I would enjoy the taste of roses, but there's something about a subtle flavor of rose in my tea that I really enjoy. And so I've tried to replicate it with a bit of rose water. And for people who aren't familiar, rose water is a water that's been flavored with rose petals and is used, I believe, in a lot of Middle Eastern sweets. So like Turkish Delight, I think, is often infused with that.
Yeah, and there's some Lebanese sweets, I believe, that also have rose water. In India, it's used quite frequently.
Oh, is it?
Too. Yeah.
In desserts?
In desserts and in drinks. So some sort of dessert type drinks will also have rose water. Yeah, it's a pretty common ingredient, I guess you can say. So I very much enjoy rose water as well. So I am not surprised by that, but I understand that some of our listeners might be thinking we're a little bit off the wall with our rose water.
Rose water, I know. And it's funny, different times of the year spark different resonance with teas that I enjoy. So for example, I love a rooibos tea in the summertime, and I love to chill or ice a rooibos tea. And rooibos teas are teas that are made, I think it's a plant, a rooibos plant, so it's not quite, or it's kind of like a spiny bush, and so the leaves of that bush are such that they can never be oversteeped. And if you've ever oversteeped a tea, it becomes very rich in tannins. And some people like a really strongly steeped tea. I don't. And therefore, the rooibos tea in the summertime, and it makes the tea a little bit more on the orange side versus on the, browny kind of tea stained, I guess, tea colored side. So I love a rooibos tea in the warmer months, and I like to ice it. I'm not a huge fan of green teas. How do you feel about green teas?
Green teas can be a bit difficult. I don't know. I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with them because I think their health properties and their oxidization properties are really, really wonderful. However, I find it a little bit too bitter for my taste. And again, because I'm so used to putting milk in my tea, I find it a little difficult to have that.
For me, green teas have a very fishiness about them. So it reminds me a little bit of miso. And I don't know, there's something about green teas that is a little bit off-putting. I can't quite figure out what it is about green teas that doesn't work for me. And I've tried matcha teas, and I've tried a green tea kind of I don't know if it's a ceremony or what they call it, but when you whisk the tea, like when they have this little bamboo whisker, and they'll take a bit of the green tea, and when I say they, it's been at specialty tea shops where they'll do this for you, and they'll sort of whip the green tea powder with warm water until it's frothy, and then they'll serve it to you that way. And I've tried to like it. I've added a bit of sweetener to it, and it just isn't my preferred tea. It's not that I dislike it, it's just not the tea I would go for. Same with white teas. I prefer a black tea over a white tea and over an herbal tea, unless I'm feeling a little under the weather.
Can we go back to rooibos for
yes,
one
of
moment?
Course, yes.
I noticed that you called it rooibos.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it pronounced different ways. Do you know the exact pronunciation?
I always thought it was rooibos. I thought, and I could be wrong, rooibos tea is a South African tea.
Sure.
So I don't know if it comes from a South African word, but it's when you look at rooibos, when you look at the actual word, it has a really unique sort of spelling because it has so many O's in it. It has ROOIBOOS, I believe is how it's spelled. So it's really quite interesting to see that tea when you see the name of it, because you're like, wow, this has a lot of vowels in it, a lot of O's in it, and it's like, how do I pronounce rooibos? Now, I think I saw it phonetically spelled, and that's why I say, some people say rooibos, robos, but I think I think it's rooibos. Yeah,
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of South Africa, have you ever been to South Africa?
I haven't been to South Africa. It's one of the countries that I would really love to visit, because having had friends go to South Africa, when they come back, they're like, Marco, South Africa is not only very beautiful, but it has a real distinct quality to it. And I don't know if you've been to countries where it's like, oh, this place is so uniquely Venice, for example. When you're in Venice, you're like, okay, there's no other place like Venice, unless you're in Las Vegas and you see, the Venetian Hotel. Then you're like, okay,
Right.
this is kind of replicating Vegas. But yet again, when you're in Vegas, it's like, okay, this is Vegas. There's no other place like Vegas. But you
Right.
could be in a city like Toronto, where we're recording from, and people will say it often reminds them of Chicago or other cities, northeastern North American cities. And there's some places, and I was told Johannesburg in South Africa is very much like that, where it's like, okay, you are in South Africa, you're in Johannesburg, it's very unique. Have you been?
I have not been. I actually have a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, who was born there, and then she was adopted and moved to Canada.
Oh, wow.
But she went back, and she still goes back, I believe. So it's one of those places that I would love to go back with her, because I think she grew up there for a few years before they moved to Canada.
It's always great to go to a city with someone who knows it well.
Absolutely.
You experience it in such a different light. I don't know if that was a recent experience of yours in England, and if you have any examples of that.
Well, England's a little bit different for me because I used to live there.
I see.
So, but that being said, because I still have friends there, it's very easy for me to go to, the newer, more interesting restaurants, or if there is a very cool exhibit or a piece of theater, they just know what's happening in the city, so I don't have to rely on a concierge or third party is telling me what might be interesting. Like, they know who I am and they know what I like, so it really makes it a fuller experience, especially when it comes to food, because I find food to be a very important part of my traveling experiences. And so that has been my experience with some of those places, but with a lot of places, actually, because I'm fortunate enough to have people that I know in those areas already. So, as you say, it really does change the experience.
We were talking before we actually started recording about the moment before, and talking about the moment before a certain event, and what the feeling you have the moment before, let's say a doctor's appointment when they're going to call you in, or the moment before you are in a line at the, getting your license renewed, and just being in that moment before, or the moment before you get on the bus when you're waiting for the bus, or the moment before you are checked in at a grocery store. I wanted to ask you about the moment before seeing a theatrical play in England versus seeing the moment before seeing a theatrical play in North America. If there is a difference, what was the moment before for you when you went to see a play in England?
So I think England is an interesting place to see a theatrical presentation, because the moment before is very different from other places in the world, because it really is the birthplace of sort of our understanding of how we write a play in this modern world, at least from a North American perspective, or like a Western perspective, and an English perspective, English language perspective. So to see Dame Judi Dench on stage and Kenneth Branagh on stage, and to see them work together is very different than seeing a Fringe show or seeing a Mervis production, because
there's an anticipation.
There's an anticipation. You have these icons of acting and both film and stage performance that you're actually able to witness live. I think it's similar probably to some of the shows that might be seen on Broadway or New York, but I still think it's a little bit different, just because it's a different type of show that I think you are more likely to see on the London stage, like the amount of Shakespeare that's just every day playing and that people go to.
I wonder how much that is a difference of, when you go see something in your own city versus going to see something in another city, if the moment before is impacted by the location of where you are. Because, for example, in England, you are sort of on vacation. That's not the city where you work, right?
Absolutely.
So you have more of a relaxed attitude, I guess you could say, or you have a little bit less of a, I live here, so you've got to impress me because, this is where I live, and I may know or may encounter you, the performer. So
you're right. You know what? You're a bit kinder or a bit more open to what you're about to see, versus maybe the city that you're in,
right.
That you live in. That's an interesting perspective. I never thought about that, but that's very true. How about you? What is do you see a lot of theater when you're traveling?
You know, it's interesting. I will see, depending on the city that I'm in. So if I'm in a place like London or New York, I really try to go see some theater, because you know it's going to be some of the best that you'll encounter. If not through the performance, at the very least with the sort of set, the backdrop, or the quality of the actual piece. But when I go to other countries, I try to see what they do well. So, for example, when we were in Spain, we really wanted to sort of see the architecture in Barcelona because of, you know, all the Gaudi architecture that's there. We made that and food a priority. And then we also saw a bunch of different art as well. So we would go to the various galleries and whatnot. Depending on the city that we're in, we try to, or at least I try to, reflect that in what we're going to see.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side, your Sleep Number setting. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. And now, during our President's Day sale, take 50% off our limited edition bed, plus an extra $100 off all mattresses. And Saturday, only at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com.
To tip off this NBA season on FanDuel, you can choose your own rewards, which means you can play your game any way you want.
I get to choose my rewards?
Yep.
Great! Now, excuse me while I lock in.
All customers choose your own reward right now in the FanDuel app. 21 plus and present in select states. 18 plus in Kentucky. Opt-in required. Rewards are non-withdrawable. Restrictions apply, including bonus and token expiration, leg requirement, and max wager amount. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Let me ask you this. When you travel, do you have any rituals you do on the plane prior to takeoff?
You know, Marco, that's an interesting question. I do have some rituals. I used to be a very nervous flyer.
Okay.
And I was really proud because in this most recent trip, I was not anxious at all.
Okay.
And I think part of that was my mindset going in. And I read up a lot about on like planes and the mechanics and you know, particularly about turbulence, etc., to calm my mind. And then while on the plane, I always have a ritual where I need to take out of my purse my iPhone, the headset. I need to, like, the magazines that I have with me,
right.
Like anything that I feel I'm going to be using on the journey needs to be in the front pocket and readily accessible. And then I always look and see what movies are going to be playing, and I have usually my movies laid out so that I have an itinerary of what I will be viewing and in what order. And then I just like to sit back and relax.
Sure. I love to have a book when I fly because I feel it's a very easy way to get hypnotized into the words on the page when you can't sleep on a plane. What I do is I'll be the only person, you know, that one person who has the light on them reading a book, and everyone else is sort of in dark,
That's
either
usually
watching.
me.
Yeah, that's my experience as well, of course. So I usually like to have my book somewhere nearby, whether it be in the front pocket, or I'll usually put it right beside me on the seat, sort of between me and the person who's sitting next to me, so that I always have it accessible. I know that my wife has a ritual that she has a knitted hat that she has, so kind of like I don't know what you would say, almost like a toque, but a knitted hat that I think her sister knit her, and she will bring a scarf with her. And even if it's summertime, she has this knitted hat and scarf, and what she'll do is she'll take the scarf and she'll put it inside the hat, and she'll use that as a pillow. And the interesting thing about that is a hat and a scarf are very easy things to travel with.
Yes.
Because when the weather is not extremely warm, you can put the hat and have the scarf on. When the weather is warm in the summertime, she'll stuff it in the pocket of her jacket or in the front of her purse, let's say. It doesn't take up much room, and there you go, and she has her little pillow and for her on the plane. And she'll always say to me, do you want me to bring a hat and a scarf for you? And I say no. And then she's like, because you're not going to use mine. And sure enough, when we go on the plane, I'll say to her, can I borrow your hat and scarf? And that's sort of another ritual that I do on the plane when I travel with my wife.
Do you do anything with socks? Like, some people have plain socks.
Oh, I would love to have plain socks or plain slippers, because one of the things that drives me a little crazy is when you go through customs, or when you go through security, I should say, and you've got to take off your shoes.
Right.
If they have laces, I've often said to myself, I just need a pair of travel shoes that slip on and off very easily. And I remember flying with an airline, and they gave me a little kit where in the kit you had like the eye mask, you had
like lotion,
earphones,
yes,
and they had
plain socks,
plain slippers,
yes,
or plain socks, and it was plain socks actually. And I thought this is such a great idea, and I loved putting on those plain socks and just having them. And I said I always bring this little kit with me. It's upstairs in my room somewhere, and I never bring it with me, but I do travel with compression socks. So when I'm on a plane, I always travel with compression socks. My mother-in-law was the one who introduced me to these compression socks. And it's funny because talking to a friend of mine, I say I never travel on a plane without compression socks. They said to me, Marco, you sound like you're 80 years old. And I'm like, no, when you fly with compression socks, it's the world of difference. Now, do you own a pair of compression socks?
I don't.
What they do is they really snugly hug your calf and leg, like however long. Mine are like just under the knee, the sock will go. So it'll really tightly sort of squeeze or hug your calf and your foot. And it's great in avoiding blood clots. You know how on long
Yes.
plane rides they say to walk around?
Yes.
Well, compression socks help to diminish that. And what they do for me is when I get off the plane, so let's say it's a 5 or 7 hour plane ride, and I get to my hotel room, the minute I take off my socks, my feet feel relaxed and refreshed. They don't feel tired, they don't feel bloated, they don't feel heavy. They feel like as if I was home and I just, put on a pair of runners.
That's you know what, I'm gonna take that advice next time, because I did find that this time when I was traveling that my feet started to get a little bit sore.
Sure.
And it's the first time that's happened.
Yeah, I recommend compression socks. Now, there are different types of compression socks that are better than others. So, depending on the type that you want, some can be really tight. And the thing about compression socks that I will say is when you fold your socks, first of all, let me ask, how do you fold your socks?
And I know that this is controversial because it's probably not the best way, but I bunch them up when, like,
you turn them inside out.
Yes, I turn them inside out. You got it.
I do too.
That. Okay.
But I've been reading the book by Marie Kondo. Everyone's sort of talking about tidying and whatnot. And she said you should have respect for your socks and you should never turn them inside out.
How are you supposed to fold them then?
Well, you're supposed to. And I had to actually watch a video on how she folded them, because I was like, if you fold socks and you put them in your drawer, they're gonna fall apart and get mixed up, and then you're not gonna. You know how you're always missing a sock, and it's like, is it in the laundry? Did it get in the dryer? Where did it go? And then it'll turn up somewhere else, and you're like, where's its match? And the most logical way to deal with this is to turn it inside out.
You got it.
But it stretches the elastic of the sock, and that happens with compression socks, and you don't want to do that.
Right.
So what I do with my compression socks is I'll either tie them together, or I have a little plastic, I don't even know what you would call it, but it's a sock holder that I kind of put both socks through it. It's almost like, when you get a bag of milk. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is our listeners might be, a bag of milk, who gets bags of milk?
Of course.
But in Canada, we have our milk in little bags, and I invite you to check that out online so you can see exactly what we're talking about. But it's sort of like the little tab that holds the bag that the milk bags come in.
Yes.
What would you call that little plasticky thing?
Oh gosh.
Well, there's no word for it. So that little plasticky thing that holds, it's the same thing that if you get bread in a bag. It holds the bag together, and it'll
like
say the date.
it's like a twist tie, but it's not. It's like
a plastic twist tie is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
So, anyways, listen, I want to thank our listeners who have joined us today on the Insomnia Project. We hope you've,
drifted off into a slumber.
And if you haven't, thank you for listening to our conversation. We do invite you to tell us what you'd like to hear us talk about, so feel free to tweet us at Listen and Sleep. Check us out at theinsomniaproject.com and tune in next time on our next podcast.
We look forward to
conversing and having you listen. And we're the only podcast that, as producers and hosts, we hope you never get to the end of. So we know we've done a good job if this podcast just plays and sort of ends and goes to the next podcast episode and you wake up at some point having had restful sleep. Till then, I'm your host, Marco Timpano.
And I'm your co-host, Nidhi Khanna.
And we hope you listen and sleep.